Something just happened on Cleveland sports media that completely flipped the Shedeur-Sanders conversation on its head. And the crazy part, it wasn't a coach, it wasn't a front office leak, it wasn't even a stat sheet. It was one man walking into a studio and exposing everything the local media has been lying about. G. Bush didn't just disagree with a few takes. He dismantled an entire narrative on live TV. For months, fans have been told the same story. Shedeur isn't the guy. Cleveland needs to draft another quarterback. The 2026 class is stacked. There are better options coming. And somehow, after only 7 games with no real preparation, Shedeur was already being labeled a mistake. But what happened on UCSS changed everything. Because instead of throwing hot takes around, G. Bush pulled out something the media hates dealing with: reality. He forced the panel to put the quarterback prospects on the screen. He forced them to compare production instead of hype. And when that list went up, the entire argument collapsed in real time. And it didn't stop there. One of the top quarterback prospects in the country accidentally exposed the biggest hypocrisy in football development. A player projected near the top of the draft admitted he still needs more reps, more experience, more time. And that's when G. Bush connected the dots. How can Cleveland demand perfection from Shedeur-Sanders when he was thrown into NFL games with 0 first-team reps, no offense built around him, and one of the worst situations a rookie quarterback can walk into? That's the question nobody in the Cleveland media wanted to answer. Because once you hear the full breakdown, once you see how weak this quarterback class really is, and once you realize what ownership is quietly signaling behind the scenes, the idea of replacing Shedeur starts to look less like smart football and more like panic. And what G. Bush said next didn't just hurt feelings. It exposed the entire plan. This whole moment didn't come out of nowhere. G. Bush didn't wake up that morning and decide to start cooking for no reason. This had been building for weeks. Ever since Shedeur-Sanders stepped on the field, local media voices have been quietly pushing the same narrative: that Cleveland needs to move on, that the quarterback room needs a reset, that Shedeur hasn't shown enough. And that's where the problem starts. Because instead of letting performance speak, certain outlets started shaping the conversation before fans could even form their own opinions. Cherry-picking mistakes, ignoring progress, hyping up draft prospects most people haven't even watched play. G. Bush called it what it was. He said the media was putting their thumb on the scale, trying to tip the outcome before the competition even had a fair chance to play out. And once he said it out loud, everything made sense. Because suddenly, you could see the pattern. Every Shedeur interception got replayed 10 times. Every good drive got brushed off. Meanwhile, college quarterbacks with 0 NFL pressure were being treated like saviors before they even stepped on a professional field. And fans felt it too. Social media exploded. Comment sections turned into war zones. Some people blindly followed the media narrative. Others started asking why the standards for Shedeur were so different from everyone else. That tension followed G. Bush into the studio. You could hear it in his voice. He wasn't debating anymore. He was correcting the record. Because in his mind, this wasn't just bad analysis. It was dishonest. And that's why what he did next caught everyone off guard. Instead of arguing opinions, he demanded proof. And that's when the real damage started. The moment G. Bush leaned forward in his chair, you could feel the energy shift. This wasn't casual debate anymore. This wasn't barbershop talk. He came in locked in, focused, and ready to challenge everything that had been said about Shedeur-Sanders and the Browns' quarterback situation. And the first thing he did, he shut down the lazy comparisons. G. Bush made it clear he wasn't there to trash other quarterbacks just to hype up Shedeur. He even said straight up that you don't have to call someone garbage to prove another player is better. That alone separated him from the hot take culture that dominates sports media. Then he changed the conversation. Instead of arguing feelings, he asked for the list. The 2026 quarterback prospects on screen right now. That request caught the entire panel off guard. Because when you're forced to put names and film next to each other, narratives get exposed fast. You can't hide behind hype anymore. You can't hide behind potential. You either perform or you don't. And when that list popped up, G. Bush didn't hesitate. He immediately went down the names and drew a hard line in the sand. Mendoza, solid prospect, possible fit elsewhere, but the rest of the list, in his words, they simply weren't better than Shedeur Sanders. That wasn't arrogance. That was conviction. And what made it hit even harder was the silence that followed. Nobody rushed to challenge him. Nobody jumped in with stats. Nobody defended the list. Because deep down, they knew he was touching a nerve. But G. Bush wasn't done. Because calling out names was only step one. The real destruction came when he started breaking down why these so-called better options weren't actually better at all. And that's where the media narrative completely collapsed. Once that quarterback list hit the screen, the energy in the room changed instantly. Because now there was nowhere to hide. No more vague takes, no more he looks the part, no more future projections without proof. It was name versus name, production versus hype. And G. Bush wasted zero time. He pointed at Mendoza first, gave him credit, said he could be a solid fit in the right situation, even suggested a team like the Raiders might make sense. That was important because it showed he wasn't just blindly defending Shedeur, he was being fair. Then he shifted to the rest of the list. Ty Simpson, Drew Aller, Carson Beck, John Mateer, the names Cleveland media had been quietly pushing as upgrades. And that's when he dropped the line that made the studio go quiet. They ain't better than Shedeur Sanders. No hesitation, no stutter, just direct. What made that moment powerful wasn't the volume, it was the confidence, because G. Bush didn't say it emotionally. He said it like someone who actually watches film. He broke down the pattern that keeps fooling people every draft cycle. Tall quarterbacks, strong arms, prototype builds, players who look good in shorts but disappear when the lights turn on. Meanwhile, Shedeur had already shown he could operate under pressure, already shown he could move the offense late in games, already shown leadership in chaotic situations. And that contrast hit hard, because Cleveland media wasn't comparing production. They were comparing aesthetics. What looks good on paper versus what actually works on Sundays. And when that reality finally got put on screen, the entire argument for drafting another quarterback started collapsing piece by piece. But G. Bush wasn't finished, because there was one comparison he saved for last. One name that had been hyped for years. And once he broke that down, there was no coming back. When G. Bush got to Drew Aller's name, the tone shifted again. Because this wasn't just another prospect on the list. This was one of the quarterbacks Cleveland media kept bringing up as a safe option. The big body, the strong arm, the so-called NFL-ready build. And G. Bush tore that idea apart. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't dance around the point. He said straight up that Drew Aller has never truly delivered at Penn State. Year after year, fans were told this is the season. And year after year, nothing changed. No signature wins, no takeover moments, no consistent dominance. Just potential. G. Bush broke down exactly why that matters. You can be tall, you can have a cannon for an arm, you can look amazing during warm-ups, but if you don't show up when the pressure hits, none of that means anything. And that's the part the media avoids talking about. They fall in love with prototypes, with measurements, with combined numbers, while ignoring how quarterbacks perform when defenses adjust, when the game speeds up, when mistakes actually matter. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders had already dealt with all of that at the NFL level. Bad protection, limited prep, tough defenses, late-game pressure. And he didn't disappear. That comparison alone exposed how lazy some of the draft hype really is. Because if Drew Aller can't dominate consistently in college with stability and system support, why would anyone expect him to magically outperform Shedeur Sanders in a harder league with worse circumstances? That question hung in the air, and nobody on the panel had an answer. But just when it felt like the conversation couldn't get more uncomfortable, one quote changed everything. And it came from a player projected near the very top of the draft. This is where the entire debate cracked wide open. Because while everyone was arguing about Shedeur Sanders, one of the top quarterback prospects in the country said something that completely flipped the conversation. Dante Moore, a player projected near the top of the draft, stepped up to the podium after a tough game and admitted something that nobody wanted to hear. He said he needs more reps, more experience, more time to adjust, more seasoning before he can truly clean up mistakes at the next level. And when G. Bush heard that quote, he paused. Then he smiled, because that one sentence destroyed months of criticism aimed at Shedeur Sanders. G. Bush broke it down in real time. So let's get this straight. A quarterback who has been starting, getting full practice reps, running an offense built around him, and receiving consistent coaching support is allowed to say he needs more development. But Shedeur was thrown into NFL games with no first-team reps, no preseason rhythm, and no system built around his strengths. And yet he was expected to be perfect. No learning curve, no grace period, no adjustment phase. That's not fair evaluation. That's setting someone up to fail. And when G. Bush connected those dots on air, the room went quiet again. Because it forced everyone to confront the double standard. If reps matter for elite college prospects, then reps matter even more for a rookie quarterback dropped into chaos. You can't pretend development only applies to certain players. It applies to everyone. And once that truth landed, the entire argument against Shedeur started falling apart fast. But G. Bush wasn't done yet. Because there was one more point he made that hit even harder. A comparison that put Shedeur's situation into real-world perspective. And it made the rush to replace him look ridiculous. After breaking down the reps argument, G. Bush took the conversation to a level everyone could understand. He stopped talking about football for a moment and started talking about real life. Shedeur Sanders has played 7 NFL games. That's it. 7. And somehow, after that tiny sample size, people were already ready to label him a failure, move on, and draft someone new. G. Bush called that out immediately. He said you wouldn't even decide to marry someone after 7 dates. You wouldn't make life-changing decisions after 7 months of knowing somebody. But somehow, fans and media felt comfortable making franchise-altering decisions about a quarterback after 7 games in the hardest league in sports. That analogy hit home because it exposed how irrational the expectations were. Shedeur wasn't brought into a perfect situation. He didn't walk into a stacked offense. He didn't inherit elite protection. He didn't get a coaching staff fully built around him. He walked into chaos. And despite that, he still showed flashes, late-game drives, tough throws under pressure, moments that prove the talent is real. But instead of letting that grow, people immediately wanted to reset again. Again. And that's how franchises stay stuck. Quarterback carousel, no patience, no development, just constant panic. G. Bush made it clear, this isn't how winning organizations operate. You don't evaluate a young quarterback without giving him real reps, real support, and real structure. And once that point landed, the pressure shifted. Because now the question wasn't, is Shedeur good enough? The question became, why is Cleveland even considering replacing him this early? And that's when G. Bush revealed something even bigger. Something about the Browns' future plans that most fans hadn't fully connected yet. Here, where reality finally smacks the entire conversation in the face. Because even if Cleveland wanted to replace Shedeur Sanders, the draft situation doesn't line up the way media keeps pretending it does. The Browns aren't picking at the top. They won their final games. They climbed out of prime draft position. And now they're sitting in the middle of the board, far away from the one quarterback prospect most people agree is actually elite. That changes everything. G. Bush made this point clear. If Cleveland had the number 1 pick, yeah, the conversation might be different. Mendoza would be in play. That's just honest football. But they don't have that pick. And the drop-off after that first name. It's steep. Once you move past the top prospect, you're not talking about sure things anymore. You're talking about development projects, long-term gambles, quarterbacks who still need heavy seasoning before they're even close to NFL ready. So now Cleveland has a choice. Do they waste another high pick chasing potential? Or do they invest in building around someone who already proved he can handle NFL pressure? That's the fork in the road. And if you look at what ownership has been doing quietly, the direction becomes obvious. They've been pushing the mentor dynamic between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. Cameras caught Shedeur going out of his way to connect with Watson after games. Team insiders have hinted that the relationship is intentional. The message is subtle but clear. Shedeur is being prepared. Watson isn't being positioned as the future. He's being positioned as insurance and mentorship while the young quarterback develops. That's not accidental. That's organizational planning. And when you combine that with Cleveland's roster needs, offensive line help, receiver upgrades, skill position depth, it becomes even more obvious. Drafting another quarterback doesn't fix the real problem. Building the offense does. And once you understand that, the media's obsession with replacing Shedeur starts to look less like strategy and more like distraction. This is the part nobody wants to admit. A lot of fans aren't actually upset about Shedeur Sanders. They're upset because they want a miracle. They want the Jayden Daniels situation, the C.J. Stroud storyline, the rookie quarterback who shows up and instantly saves the franchise in one season. And G. Bush called that mindset exactly what it is. A fantasy. Because those seasons are rare. They're anomalies. They're lightning in a bottle. And even when they happen, they don't always last. Look at what happened after. C.J. Stroud exploded his rookie year, then came back to earth. Jayden Daniels shocked the league, and now teams are adjusting. Defensive coordinators catch up. Film catches up. Reality catches up. That's how the NFL works. You don't build a franchise hopping to win the lottery every year. You build it with structure, with patience, with development. And that's the part Cleveland keeps getting wrong. Instead of fixing the offensive line, upgrading weapons, modernizing the scheme, and hearing quarterback-focused coaches, people keep screaming for another draft pick to magically fix everything. But changing quarterbacks without changing the environment doesn't solve anything. It just resets the same problem. G. Bush made it clear the Browns already have a defense that can compete. Elite corners, strong pass rush, playmakers on that side of the ball. What they don't have is a properly built offense. And that's where the real work needs to happen. Not chasing the next shiny prospect. Not recycling rookies. Not falling for media hype. But committing to the quarterback they already have and giving him the tools to actually succeed. And once you see it from that angle, the whole draft another QB argument completely falls apart. Which brings us to the final question. What should Cleveland actually do next? So when you zoom out and look at everything that just happened, the message is clear. G. Bush didn't just win an argument on live TV. He exposed a mindset that's been holding Cleveland back for years. The Browns don't have a quarterback problem. They have a patience problem. They have a development problem. They have a media-driven panic problem. Shedeur Sanders wasn't given a fair runway. He wasn't given real reps. He wasn't handed a system built around his strengths. And yet, in only 7 games, he still showed more poise than most rookies ever get credit for. Meanwhile, the same people demanding his replacement are hyping up college quarterbacks who openly admit they need more time, more reps, and more development. That contradiction says everything. Nothing in this upcoming draft class is clearly better than what Cleveland already has. And instead of burning another high-pick chasing potential, the smarter move is obvious. Protect Shedeur. Build the offense. Fix the line. Upgrade the weapons. Hire coaches who know how to develop quarterbacks instead of recycling broken systems. Because if Cleveland gets this right, this entire controversy will look ridiculous a year from now. But if they listen to the noise again, they'll be right back where they started. So now it's your turn. Do you agree with G. Bush that Shedeur Sanders is better than every quarterback in this draft class? Are you tired of the media trying to replace him after 7 games? And what moves should Cleveland make this offseason to actually support their young quarterback? Drop your real opinion in the comments. If you made it this far, hit that like button. Subscribe for real Browns coverage without the media spin. Turn on notifications because this offseason is about to get wild. And trust me, this story isn't over yet.